Some of you may have to rejoin again. So welcome to this session on MD 412. Today we are continuing with block 3 of the course, and we will talk about learning resources in distance education. We were earlier on, we finished doing models of for instructional design, and last week also we discussed block 3, the IE approach. Now we move forward to more practical things about education and instructional design, as well as we will talk about the issues which are related to implementation of the programs which are conducted under distance education. And that is why the entire process of teaching learning will be also part of it. And in that, we are going to speak about today the role of learning resources. So I'm just going to put on my slide for you so that you can follow it on the slides, and then we will have a short discussion on it and proceed. Please let me know if you're able to see the PPT. Can you see the presentation? Are you able to see it?
No.
Not yet.
No.
Not yet. Is it coming on?
No.
Oh. Okay, so I'll stop it and we'll try again. Let us see if we are able to see it now. Not yet. Not yet. I think somebody wants to join, so just a moment. Is it coming on now? No.
No. Let's wait. Let's
Yes.
wait a minute.
Is it coming on? Not yet, because there is a
No.
we are having a little bit of an internet problem, so because of that it is now. It seems to be going off. It's coming, but it's going off now. Yeah, I think it's not coming on. Okay, let's just see why is it not coming.
Yes, we are sharing now.
Is it coming on now?
Yes.
Let us see if it comes. Is it visible now?
Yes. We are presenting, but
You see? Can you see it?
yes, we have seen, but it's blank.
Not yet?
We
No,
can
you
see
are sharing.
It's blank. Blank.
Okay, wait, let me just stop presenting and then let's see what happens. Why? Why is it not coming on? Not coming on.
Yeah, it's clear now.
Is it come on now?
It's on now.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
Yes, it's clear.
Yes, finally. So that's good. Thank you. Because of the connectivity problems today, it took a while. I'm sorry about that. But anyway, so today what we are going to do is that we are talking about the uh, importance and relevance of learning resources in distance education. So by now you are well aware of so many aspects of distance education in the last 6 7 classes that we've had. You are aware of distance education. So before I go on to talk about learning resources, let me just ask you, what, in your opinion, are learning resources in distance education? What do you think they are? What is it that makes up? You can give me examples, or you can uh, tell me what you think are learning resources in distance education. Let's talk about it. Any of you, what do you think are learning resources? I can, yes, Mr. Bukar. Are you raising your hand, Mr. Ishaku Bukar
Yes, ma.
and Mr. Morris?
Yes, ma. My
Yes, Mr.
Yes,
Bukar,
understanding.
yes,
please
yes,
go
Prof.
ahead.
Yes, Prof. In my own understanding, I will cite one example of a learning resource in distance education. An example that I can give is self-learning materials are the learning resources. I'll just give one example.
Much. Yes, they are learning resources. And then let's hear what Mr. Ishaku Bukar has to say. Yes, please.
All right, ma. Ma, to my understanding, the learning resources are the. Can you hear me, ma? Hello.
Yes, please speak on. Please speak. Please
All right.
speak.
All right. I say, to my understanding, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
All right. The learning
We can
resources
hear you.
are the prints. Can you hear me, ma?
Yes.
All right. The learning resources are the prints and non-print materials that are used to convey
They
the
are what?
learning
Learning
activities
material.
from the print and non-print learning materials. That is uh, the example of prints are the textbooks, journals, magazines, and other readable materials. The example of non-prints are uh, films, videos, and models, 3D
Okay,
models,
so that's
uh,
good. You've given us some.
like maps and the rest.
Let me see what. Yes, hear what Mr. Buhari has to say. Adamu, Mr.
Hello,
Buhari Adamu.
hello, good morning, ma.
Please
Hello.
go ahead.
Learning resources in distance education is
Yes, please go ahead.
software, reading materials, videos, recordings, and counseling session.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else would like to contribute? What is learning resources? All right. So then, what you have said is very correct. That learning resources are all these things which you have mentioned in terms of whether they are self-learning material, as Mr. Morris said, or videos which Mr. Bukau and Mr. Adamu have said, Facebook and so on. But we will study more about them and see what other things are responsible for, which can be called learning resources. So, in this session, I'm going to talk about the following things. One is to explain the need and significance of learning resources in distance education. Also, we will discuss what are their features, what are the characteristic features of learning resources. Especially, there is a concept called universal design. And this concept is very important because it helps us to bridge gaps and to make learning more accessible. So we will talk about the concept of universal design. We will also see what are the different types of learning resources. Just now you have mentioned a few types, but we will add to those types, and we will make a list of the different type of learning resources that can be used by distance learners to improve their learning. And lastly, we will identify some of the guidelines that should be kept in mind when you as distance teachers are going to design these learning resources. So let us come to the first point, which is to understand what is the meaning of learning resources. While most of you just now have pointed out what are the different types of learning resources, it's important to understand the meaning of the term resources. As you know, and as we have said again and again in this whole session, many of the sessions, is that the important thing is that here learners are at a distance. When we are talking about distance learners, there is a geographical distance between the teacher and the learner. In addition to that, it is also possible that because of this distance, there may be different contexts in which the learners are. My context just now is different from maybe some of you. Maybe it's, as you know, of course, we are in different time zones. You are in the morning, you are studying in the morning. It is almost 3:30 in the afternoon here for me. You may be you may be at home. I'm at the workplace. You may be at your in some other space. So the contexts of distance learners are different. Every time distance learners are different. So keeping in mind the fact that their contexts are different, it is important to understand that when we are talking about learning resources, we are talking about those resources which help the learner to navigate through their learning. Because of this distance, because of the fact that the teacher is not available at all times, it is very necessary that the material that is designed should be such that acts like a teacher in print. The learning material which you said, some of you said that self-learning material, that is the teacher in print. There are other resources which help the learner to navigate through the learning. And these materials help the learner to better organize their learning process as well as facilitate them in their goal. You know very well, as distance teachers, the goal is of learning. When we are coming to irrespective of the fact of distance, but the ultimate goal is that every learner should be able to better understand the program, the courses, the materials, and at no stage should it be such that there is a barrier to the learning. In order to eliminate the barriers in learning, teachers try to provide a number of resources which can help the learner, which can help, in fact, different types of learners also, which it can help them. So learning resources, when we speak about them, unlike a formal education system where you might have one textbook, or you might have the teacher who is the biggest learning resource because the teacher is standing in front of in the classroom and in the same time zone, in the same contiguous situation, the learner can immediately ask questions. But that is not so in the case of distance learners, and therefore we try to provide them with different types of learning resources. When we also speak about the need and significance of learning resources, especially as I said, distance education. We are saying this, we are talking about this need because there is a diversity of the of the distance learners. As I said earlier on, that there are learners of different age groups. There are learners who are in different geographical regions and they have different educational backgrounds. In fact, some of them also may have different economic status. And as you will appreciate, that when learners are of different age groups, then the way in which they address their learning is also different. What attracts or what is useful for learning for someone who is maybe younger may not be appropriate for someone who is in an older age group. And I must tell you that in IGNU, which is a distance learning institution, of course, we have learners of all age groups. We have people who are doing courses. In fact, in our own distance education course, we have a gentleman who is almost 80 years of old. He's doing a program in of distance education. And we also have another person who is enrolled in our same program as you all have enrolled, Masters in Distance Education. He is a retired very senior retired government official who is now coming back. He says, I have finished my career bureaucrat, but I still want to continue trying to understand distance education. This is a new field for me, and therefore he has enrolled in that, and we are all in touch. And in the same way, there are people then who would have different educational backgrounds. We have people who are you not able to hear me, Angela? Angela, are the rest of you able to hear me?
Yes, we are hearing you, ma'am.
Angela sent a message saying that she's
Yes,
not.
yes.
Okay,
We are
so
here.
Well,
We are here.
oh,
We are here,
you can
ma.
hear me. Okay, because
Yes.
I just saw a
Yes,
message by
yes.
Angela who says
Angela, she says
we
she's
cannot
moving.
hear.
I can hear.
So Angela, maybe because you're traveling and you're moving, I think you said I'm in a van right now. So maybe once you get home, you might be able to hear me better. So I hope you reach home so quickly so that you can join the class, Angela. Okay, so then we will proceed. So as I was saying that because of this, there are also the important thing is that there is a different educational background. This educational background also creates a problem because sometimes as teachers as teachers we might pitch something at a very high level, and then people with a higher educational background will be able to better understand it, or if it's complex maybe they can understand it, but those who are just young or who are not so much familiar, say technology also, they may not be able to understand it. So therefore these are as distance teachers we have to keep in mind that there are different age groups, there are different geographical regions, as you just saw the message which Angela has put on the chat box saying that it's raining very heavily in Mauritius, so there is a network problem. But this session is being recorded, so if we did not have this recording facility, then she would have missed the class. But maybe later on, when Angela reaches home, she can look at the session and you can see it. So this, in a sense, that this recording is also a learning resource which will be available to you and you can see it again at your own pace and time whenever it is convenient for you. So in that sense, when we speak about learning resources in distance education, we're talking about all these learning resources. not just Facebook and self-learning material, but anything that helps you to learn better, anything which understands, which provides you support in your learning. These are all learning resources. And there are many things, and as technology grows, as new versions of programs come, these learning resources also get updated. Earlier on, when distance education started, the two most important learning resources were printed material and audiovisual. At that time, in India, in 1985, IGNU was set up, and at that time there were just cassettes, audio cassettes which used to be made, and video cassettes which were prepared. But today, with the growth of technology, learning has become very much different, because now we have satellite education, we have education which is supported by satellite, we have internet-based education, and so many other things which are there. And that is why we have to keep on evolving in distance education. You cannot be static. Distance education is actually a very, very dynamic system of learning. Having said that, I'd like to go on a little further and come to the point which I'm trying to drive at, is that there is a need for trying to, and because there are so many different types of people of different age groups, backgrounds that we just spoke about, it's important then that we are able to think up of a way in which there is a commonality, and that commonality comes from the fact that there is a universal design which is there. The universal design, what does it mean? Has any of you, I won't take it just now, has any of you heard of this concept of universal design? Before I could, are you aware of this concept of have you heard this word universal design before? Are you aware of this universal design?
No, no, ma'am.
Yes or no? Can you hear me?
No,
Yes. Okay. So
no,
has
ma'am.
any of
I
you
don't
heard of this
think so.
idea of universal design? Yes. Yes, Mr. Who was that? Mr.
I think there's a
Mr.
technical problem,
Have
Miss
you heard
Angela.
of universal design? Any of you? Anybody? I'm not able to hear anyone now. Universal design?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me or not? Okay.
We can hear you,
So
ma'am.
then let
Yeah,
me
we can hear you.
just explain this whole idea of okay. So let me just spend a little while talking about this whole concept of universal design. So while we are using the idea the principles of universal design, and I'll tell you what the principles are.
Hello, Drisa, please mute yourself.
Okay.
So when we're talking about universal design, Mr. Dirasa, Mr.
Mr. Drisa.
Okay. Mr. Dirasa, I'll have to mute you. Facing.
No, there is no problem, ma'am.
Okay, so let's proceed. So this whole idea of Okay, fine. Thank you. This whole idea of universal design basically has come from the field of design. And what happened was, the story behind this is that it is actually related to design, because design, this whole designers were talking about how do we make a design which is applicable, or which can help everybody. Thinking about this design as to how it can be universally accepted, or universally it can benefit people. For instance, if you see a building, and you see a building which is and you see a set of stairs there. Now, if there is a building which is in which there are maybe 4 stairs to enter before you to enter the lobby, while you and I may not have any problem entering a building, but think about someone who is on a wheelchair. How that person enter the building? Think of someone who has a problem in walking. How will that person enter the building? Think of toilets where you have where you need a wheelchair bound person to access it. Maybe 50 years ago, were there toilets which were designed for people who were wheelchair bound, or who needed some assistance in going there? Were they designed such? No, they were excluded. There are so many places where exclusion is taking place. People who are maybe they are visually impaired, or they are hearing impaired. For instance, this class which is going on, as of now, only those who are able to visually see this presentation speak to me, it's accessible. But we need a design where where it is applicable, or it is accessible to all. And that is exactly what this universal design is all about, because the idea was that the the design of products should be such that it can be used maximum by people of all ages, as well as people of all abilities, not those who are disabled, or who don't have that ability of walking or seeing or hearing, auditory problems. They are excluded. So this whole idea of universal design has actually come very much from the field of design itself. And in doing so, this has been adopted by education also. And it has, in the field of education also, this realization that, are we making our courses or our programs such that we are keeping them only for a selected type of people? Are we excluding people? Therefore, this consciousness has now come into the procedure and the delivery of programs, that to the best of the best possible, we should try to make programs uh, which are accessible to all kinds of people of all abilities. And that is what universal design is all about. And what this universal design then has some principles. And these principles basically are that there should be, as I said, equitable use, that people of all abilities should be able to make use of those of that design. That it does, as I said again and again, that whatever abilities or disabilities you might have, but it is important that you are able to use that design, whether it is whether we are talking about learning resources, or we are talking about the implementation of programs. The fact is that you should be able to use them. Another very important thing is that of flexibility. Many times we find that programs are not flexible. By by flexibility, we can mean many things, and I'll explain that also just now. But flexibility is a principle of universal design because it allows you uh, to be a part of the system. It doesn't it is not rigid, so such that because of any reason you are pushed out of the system. Now when you look at distance education, you'll see that there is flexibility in the system, which is different from from the rigidities of the conventional system. You see, in the conventional system, which is there, you'll find that if a person is in a class, and especially I'm talking about school education, Jyoti, class pani. When we're talking about school education, and you find that if a person is in a class and that person is not able to clear the final examination, he or she is declared as failed. That is because there is only one opportunity to take the examination. But on the other hand, when you look at distance education, or you rather, I would say you look at open learning, not so much distance education, but when you look at open learning, you'll find that the system's approach towards examinations is flexible. Here, flexible means that a person can take the examination not once, not twice, but maybe 3, 4 times, because it is understood that that person might have some commitment that comes in, and for that reason, he or she is not able to take the examination. Supposing as a woman, I have taken admission, but but just before and I am going to have a baby, and just before that, I have to get into the hospital because I suddenly feel that the baby is coming now. Does that girl lady fail? Institution. But if she's enrolled in an open learning system, no, she doesn't take the exam that time. She takes it later. So this is how the systems of open learning are more flexible. Similarly, in terms of the study time also, the programs are flexible because they allow you to study in your own time and in your own space. There are many such features of universal design which have been applied in the designing of courses and programs in an open learning system. Then let's then come to the which says that it is simple and intuitive. Why should we make something complex? Why should we make something so difficult that it drives away people rather than brings them forward? So again, in terms of designing, what is the basic principle is that keep it simple. Let everybody be able to use it. Do not exclude people merely because they are not able to even understand what the principle is all about. Therefore, keep it simple is one of the principles of universal design. Then irrespective of their sensory abilities or their perceptions, it should be so simple that everybody is able to access it and use it. Another aspect is that of the fact that there has to be, almost to the best of ability, zero tolerance, zero error tolerance, so that in terms of the appropriateness of the design, it should be able to be without any faults. There should be no error in it, so that it is able to include everybody. Even in terms of physical effort, as I said before also, that whether it is walking upstairs or whether it is pulling a door open or a complicated kind of a thing, if the physical effort is low, then perhaps it will be simpler for many people to use it, especially those who are fragile, those who are old, those who have some physical ailment, those who are unwell. These kind of principles are important to make the learning more easier and simpler. In terms of size and approach of use is also necessary, because we don't want something which is so huge that it becomes bulky, it takes up a lot of space, and it is just a burden to use it. Rather than being simple, it becomes a nuisance. Yeah, and therefore, this principle of universal design, which is used in education also, implies that you must keep yeah, you must keep in mind that the design is such that it allows, it caters for size and space. I'll stop here for a little while, and I'll and check with you if there are any questions that you'd like to ask me at this stage. I think my net has gone. Okay. Are you able to, are you here? Are there any questions that you'd like to ask me? Or can you give me any examples of of universal design which may be used in your country? I can see Mr. Bukar
Excuse me.
wanting to say something. Yes, sir. Please. Yes, please.
Yes, ma. It's a query, ma.
Please.
Yeah, my query is that
Yes, please.
this universal design, is it for conventional uh, mode of learning, or is including distance education?
As of now, we were just talking about as of now we were talking about distance, we were not talking about distance education or conventional learning. We were only talking about the principles of universal design. What we were saying was that distance education,
Yes.
conventional education, distance education, today, in fact, it's a very interesting question you've asked actually. In fact, earlier on, open education and conventional education were at two ends of the spectrum. Today, what is happening is that the gap between conventional education and distance education or open education is reducing. Earlier on, as I when we were at least in India, I can say that, because with after the new education policy, the new education policy has also stressed a lot on many aspects which are actually very similar to the principles of a universal design, which includes flexibility. Earlier on, and you can tell me if this is happening in your country, conventional system was quite rigid, was rather rigid, in fact. Is that so in your country, that conventional education is more rigid than, say, Nigerian Open University or UNISA or Botswana or any of these other open learning systems?
Pardon, ma.
Because Mr. Yes, please.
Yes, I didn't get you.
What I asked was that in your country, is the
Yes, ma'am.
conventional system, which is the regular system, traditional system, is
Yes.
it rigid? By rigid, I mean that you go to a class, you pass or you fail, if it is meant for people of one age group are in the same class. Do you find that so?
Yes, it's rigid, ma. Yes, ma. Some of the
Can you just
program,
repeat yourself, please?
as you asked, ma, I say some of the program in my country, they are rigid. There are no provision for such flexibility in terms of disabilities. But there are some programs that are designed for such particular uh, issues, like part-time programs or distance education programs. But in conventional, with our universities, their mode of operation is rigid. It's not flexible. Because when you miss an examination or you miss a test, you can only follow up in the subsequent level. But it will affect uh, your progress in that studies because you will not graduate along with your peer. That means like you are automatically demoted. Did you
Which
got me?
country are you from, Mr.? Which country are
I'm
you from, Mr. Bukar?
I am from Nigeria, ma.
Nigeria. Okay, right.
Yes, yes, ma.
Anyone else from anyone else from some other country, Zambia or Angela is there from Mauritius? Anyone else would like to uh, talk about this rigid versus flexible issue in terms of what is it in your country? If you can tell me your country and then give an example also of that. Do you think that principles of universal design are being used or not used? The difference between conventional and open education? Yes, Angela.
Uh, in some institution, I can say there's a mixture of universal design and some rigidity. It's not really kind of like tolerance for error or even allow, some students to, for example, take an exam if that person is ill because they have to submit a medical certificate, for example, within a number of working days. So I don't find it really universal design because, for example, if somebody is ill and that person falls ill during the exam, they have a number of days to submit their medical certificate. Otherwise, it's considered like a fail. So I don't know if that fall in universal design, ma'am. If
Would not really fall in universal design unless it is a part of the policy, because this is, as you're saying, if someone falls sick, but as a design, that you design that, okay, no, if you for any reason, like for instance, I say in an open distance learning, it is it is the design of the program that that the length of the program, let's say the program is of 4 years. Now it is the student is given the benefit that any time in those 4 years you can take the examination. So that is part of the design. Not that this might happen and that
okay,
might happen, because there are so many things that happen in life which you can't cater for. But you know that this is a program which I've enrolled for, and I can complete it in 4 years. This is the time, these are the times when the university will have the exam. I can take the exam when I'm ready to take the exam.
yeah,
Not that there's an eventuality that happens, so I take the exam. So
okay,
in that sense, the designing of the program is critical, and in the conventional system, and which is why many people in the formal education system used to drop out, because they were not able to stay within the system, because they may be, you see, in countries like India, where there is a which is a agriculturally predominant country. Now, during the season, if there is a student who comes from a village and he has to go back for harvesting at that time, and that time is coinciding with the examinations, between choosing to give an examination or going to harvest the crops, the family of the student will say, please come home and do this work because this is your livelihood. So so therefore such persons prefer to come to an open system which is designed to keep them within the system, as against those who would be then labeled as failures or dropouts, which is not a very nice thing to be called.
Yeah.
So that's why the issue of design is a policy decision. And today, yes, I think someone, Moses, Mr. Moses, you want to say something? Okay, so that is why these all these aspects have to be right at the stage when we are planning the course, when we are thinking about a course. Then, before even we decide what is the content to be put in the course, this structure of the course is very, very important. Although we are talking about learning resources, but the basic principle is that of universal design. Why should we not make a system where maximum people can stay in that system rather than being pushed out? The word in many developing countries, the problem is of push outs from the system, because the system caters only to the cream of the people who can afford education in terms of finances, in terms of their stability in their parental homes. They can afford education, but large parts of the population have their day-to-day living which they have to go to. So, why is it that if that a university like the Indira Gandhi National Open University, we have millions of students? It is because the formal systems caters only for those who are within that straight jacket of the system. And I'd like to tell you that universities like IGNOU, at the postgraduate level, and you may see this in maybe Nigeria also. I haven't studied the data, but in the postgraduate level, we find that the number of women students is more than the number of male students. Because in a conventional system, perhaps issues of marriage, children, family living, taking care of your home take up a priority. But if you are in an open system, you can manage all these things without leaving your studies. So there is a possibility of many more sections of the population seeking education through systems which are more open. And open education, when we speak of open education, we are talking about the freedom to learn, where the learner's autonomy rather is right at the center. If you look at the philosophy of distance education, then you should also read about Michael Moore, who talks about the learner autonomy, and how when we design materials and so on, we have to keep in mind these principles so that learning is more inclusive and learning caters to is not rigid. I'm not go- I would be digressing a little bit, but this is just to explain to you the difference between the structures of the conventional system and structures of the open system, and why today most countries are moving towards this, to breaking down the ivory towers in a sense, especially in higher education, because this breakdown of ivory towers, where higher education was meant only for the elite, is being slowly broken down. Okay, so let's go back to our principles of learning of universal design and see where we move. So here we are, we've done this, we've done the space. Okay, so coming back to the issue of features of learning resources. So in a sense, in a way, I may be just repeating myself, but when we talk about the features of learning resources, and when we are making learning resources, what we are saying is that the first principle or the first feature is that we as distance teachers must try to make resources which are as inclusive as possible. And by that inclusiveness, I would mean all those principles of learning, all the principles of universal design should be, Jyoti, should be included in this, rather than, which is why when you look at materials of distance education, we find that most of them are, is my PPT visible? Is it visible? I think it's, can you see the
Yes.
PPT?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
It's visible, ma.
Okay, thank you. So when we are talking about learning resources, we are talking about making them as inclusive as possible. And again, to repeat myself, that let's follow the principles of universal design as much possible as we can, right? Accessibility is also a principle of learning resources. So of universal design. So yes, we will follow that also. Affordability is something which is also important, because when we are talking about supporting learners, then let us not what do you say? Let us not exclude them on issues of economics. Sometimes what happens is, I remember that when we were in college, we would get books which were published by American publishing houses. And those books, which were obviously priced in dollars or pounds, was so expensive that it was simply not possible to afford them. So either you had to just go and sit in the library and read them, but none of us could afford to buy them. And in a sense, if something is, however good it might be, but if you cannot afford it, then it means that you are actually being deprived of that knowledge, and that happens ever so often. And which is why there are many publishers now who bring out prints which says, for only for India, because they realize that having that people are not buying those books because they cannot afford them. How can you spend a month's salary to buy a book, however good it might be? So if something is not affordable, then there is something wrong with the resource. And that is why today, world over, this whole concept of open educational resources has come. Are you aware of this OER? Have you heard this term, OER?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
I have been reading quite a lot on OER because it's very practical to get books, free books, and I mean, free textbooks that, as you say, impossible to afford.
Yes. Yes. And that has been the problem uh, for all students. I would say in Asia, in Africa, in all the developing countries, that we cannot afford, and we cannot afford books or materials or journals, research journals, which are priced in based upon the economy of the developing country of the developed countries. So therefore, now things are a little better, because now you have what are called open educational resources. In fact, the whole movement of OERs is exactly this. OER says that, and please note the word used is open. Open, as we know, that open universities are more flexible, open universities are more affordable. So openness by itself is a philosophy, and the philosophy of open education is the freedom to learn. And that is why when we are talking about open educational resources, the earlier resources which were available were closed. Like the conventional system, they were closed because we could not either afford them or we could not reach them. They never came to the country. There was no internet that you could see, you could access. But now with OER, this whole movement which has started of OER, it means that there are these open access journals, there are open access books, which you can legitimately access. Earlier on, maybe there were in fact there were so many in India also. There were used to be many court cases between publishers or foreign publishers and local photocopier guys, because they were copying out and doing that. These were genuine problems. Therefore, now with open educational resources, you can legitimately have access to a resource, and you have what is called the now Creative Commons licenses, where you can use the resource provided you give credit for that resource. So this is a very big step in the to make resources more accessible and affordable. So then let's move forward to the next point, which is that of being handy and of a resource being handy and efficient. Of course, a resource has to be handy and efficient. And handy and efficient basically means that you don't need to lug it around the place. It should not be a burden to there, but it should be such which is readily available. And that is why the internet is a big help, because there at the click of a button, you might find an OER which supports your research, which helps you to understand things better. There has also been a big movement in India. Why I'm quoting India is because I know that you will find a similarity with India and Africa, or Asia and Africa. There's also been a big movement in India where it has been said that the school books, which are so heavy, or the school bag which children have to carry, those resources should also be reduced. A 6-year old carrying a bag which weighs 10 kilos on their back, and the health problems that they start having. These are all researches which have been done by independent researchers and by government bodies, and solutions have been found. For instance, the no homework policy at primary level, no homework policy, the policy that children will keep their books in the classroom, and they will come to school without any books. The books and the class books will be kept in the classroom. They will work in the class and they will go home, so that they have time for playing, for meeting people, for relaxing, and doing all the other things. So this is because if your resources is bulky, and inefficient, it is not going to help the education. And when we talk about these kind of resources, we must think of the fact that our students are in the university system also. Maybe a young mother, or maybe a working mother, or they may be an executive who is working from a long hours. So making things which are bulky and not very efficient would not help the case. I can see a hand. Yes, Mr. Matthew, would you like to say something? Mr. Matthew?
Yes, I have a question here.
Yes, please.
Yeah, firstly, I would like you to repeat on the feature which talks about the inclusive, the point number 1. And number 2, just my observation. If you go on if you go on internet and then you try to search for the books, if I may not be wrong, I may use this word just for the sake of explanation. You are going to see some of the books which are found online are useless books, books which have got no information at all. While the books which are expensive, you will see that they're going to charge us a little something. Now, my question here is, would it be justifiable if you can provide us with the links where you can find these important books which are free? Because most of the good books, Madam Doctor, we are supposed to pay. The useless books are already available in the useless books. Thank you.
Good point. You see, the thing is that the internet has got, you see, the problem of overdose of information is very much a problem that we all have to deal with. On the internet, there is so much of irrelevant information that sifting out this information is also a major problem. So if you look at the course material which has been given to you, which is the material of MADE, you will find that there are some books which are given at the end of the courses, at the end of the block. You will find that. Also, what you can do is that we are trying to provide links also, which you can access, and which can be of use. But as when we were talking about open, and you will find a lot of very good resources if you go to the Commonwealth of Learning's websites, voices. If you see the COL, Commonwealth of Learning, because Commonwealth of Learning has been promoting open distance learning very much, and you'll find that there are many resources which are available there. So I would say that even if you go to the UK Open University website, there also you will find resources there. So plus, as we were talking about the fact that there are open access journals, and those open access journals, and some of the journals, like which I can tell you that they are open access, like you'll find like journals of distance education. The Journal of Iredol is there, the Asian Journal of Distance Education is there, Open Learning is there. These are all journals which you might find something relate. I can't tell you that this article will be useful or not, but as those working in the area of distance learning, it would be interesting for you to read some of these distance education open learning journals which are there. And again, as I said, the best resource site is actually the Commonwealth of Learning, because they also conferences which they do, and the conference papers are all under Creative Commons. The papers are all available. So by Creative Commons means that you can download those papers, you can cite those papers, provided you acknowledge that so and so is the author, and they are all in the OER category. So that way it will, these kind of resources will help you in the distance learning area. What was the second question that you asked for this one? I remember. What was the first one that you asked?
Yeah, would you repeat the first feature, inclusive there?
Inclusive. When we are talking about inclusion, we are talking of largely the principles of universal design. By inclusion, we mean that supposing I am, if there is a material which I'm giving, and I'm talking about, whereas I'm giving you this self-learning material, which is printed, right? It's in a printed format. But I'm a person who is visually impaired. Then how am I going to, how is that person going to read that material? Do I have a supporting audio material with it so that the person can hear it? Do I have some other way, or does that person have software which can allow them to hear the material? And today, in today's day of technology, there are many ways by which there can be multiple ways in which learning can take place. The same material can be presented in so many different formats. And inclusion means trying to ensure that maximum people can be included by, so that by making sure that there are various formats, various ways in which the reach can be undertaken. So inclusion basically means trying to include rather than exclude. Okay, I hope that helps you.
Thank you, Prof. Yeah, thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, or should we proceed? Okay.
Prof,
So,
maybe your comment. Like I will refer to the learning resource which have been provided to us, like the self-study material. When you look at it, the way it has been designed, you will find that there are first specific outcomes, then the content, then there is also activity, and the answers are provided at the end in most of self-learning materials for distance learners. Are they characteristics or features?
so what in the next class, maybe in the next class, I will discuss how these materials are designed, because we'll talk about the design of materials in the next class, because I'm going to talk about the features of self-learning material. We'll do that in your in this unit 18 of this MD 412. That also covers parts of what the question that you are asking, but I will also take it up because you must understand that if you have to write self-learning material, then how are you going to write that self-learning material? And I will talk about the instructional design of self-learning material. So I will not directly answer your question just now, because we will take it up. Mr. Morris will take it up in a separate class, because there is a need for understanding the difference between self-learning material and a textbook, because textbook is different and this material which has been provided to you for distance learning is different. So we'll talk about it in another class. Maybe in the last week, 28th, 29th, I think I have classes. We'll talk about it then. Okay. All right. So let's proceed and let's see where we are. All right. So here, now we talked about the fact that it should be handy and efficient. And in today's day and age, it's become very important that the material that we make, the the way we design it, the way we use it is environment friendly and reusable. Earlier on, uh, it was taken for granted that paper is available and you'll have printed course materials. But today, realizing the impact of paper on trees, on climate, and so on, there is a consciousness that whatever we do, either it should be printed or, because remember, when we are talking about millions of people in the system, and printing books, printing materials, printing so many things. Even IGNOU is trying to cut down on the printing part and try to, earlier on, we never had this option, but today IGNOU gives an option to its learners. If they would want e-content, which is digital materials, then the fee is reduced by 15%, because we are saying that, if you don't want printed copies of the book, then your admission fee is reduced. Again, this is a policy so as to make sure that there is a lesser impact of this, or rather, the learning resources are more environmentally friendly, and we don't burden the earth with more and more paper and cutting down of trees and so on. We try to tell our students that you give back your books to the study center so that they are able to recycle them also. And this is not just for this IGNOU, but for all. I remember when we were in school, I always got the hand-me-downs of my elder sister's books because this is how we functioned. Whatever it came down. Today, there's a new word for slow fashion. They talked about slow fashion and stuff like that. But I think we always got clothes from our elder siblings. So it's no big deal. We've always lived like that, and we've been quite happy about it. So let's proceed ahead then. And then we come to this issue of discipline appropriate. Yes, this is important because when we are talking about learning resources, then you might need a different learning resource for different disciplines. Do you agree with this? Different discipline appropriate learning resources are important. You cannot uh, you cannot teach, let's say, a vocational course merely by using a flat book or a flat paper thing. You might realize that having a video as a learning resource is necessary when you are trying to teach a vocational course, because there is a model that has to be built. There is a requirement for demonstration which has to be taken. There is a requirement for showing how a skill has to be imbibed. So some disciplines are such that you need different. You can't use the same type of learning resource for all disciplines. Another thing is that of aligning to achievement of learning outcomes. As I said, that some disciplines would require skills, some would require competencies. So depending on the learning outcomes that are there, that you have to be achieved, there also you will try to make sure that you build learning resources so that each of the learning outcomes is achieved successfully. Another aspect is that of making it interactive as much as possible, because of the fact that these are meant for distance learning. Therefore, this issue of making it interactive effort should be made to create learning resources which are interactive. Assistive, of course, as we said, because when we're talking about universal design, of course, it has to assist you. It has to be assistive in the sense that it should be able to help you, facilitate you, guide you through the material. And these assistive resources are maybe also in the form of some kind of app or software which a person with disability might need. So these are also very, very important for, as a resource. Okay, so then let's proceed. Here I have asked for a reflection, which I'd like to hear from you. Based upon your study and experiences, identify some technological tools that may serve as effective learning resources for persons with different types of disabilities. So, can you think of any resource which you are aware of, resource or type of resource? I won't say exactly the resource, but any type of resource which might be useful for a person who has a disability. So you'll have to tell me the disability and what kind of resource would be useful for them. If you are a distance teacher and you feel that I need uh, to have this resource, so I can see that Mr. Moses has raised his hand. Yes, Mr. Moses.
Okay, ma. Actually, I'm privileged to attend an integrated school with the deafs. So, in the school of the deaf, I got to understand that there's what we call partial deafness and complete deafness. So, in case a student has partial deafness, so there is a hearing a hearing aid device that student can wear on his ear that will amplify whatsoever you are saying so that the person can now hear you clearly. So they usually run tests on the deaf student to know if they have partial deafness or it is a complete deafness before they will now recommend such device to assist them in learning.
Thank you, Mr. Moses. This is such a wonderful, like a wonderful sharing that you have done. It's really very, very interesting, and you see how it's an integrated school, which also means that they are catering for those who are not deaf, who have a normal sense of hearing, and those who have a little lesser sense of hearing. And as Mr. Moses rightly said, that there are tools by which the level of hearing is being checked, and I think probably because of those tools they are able to hear. Then is that right, Mr. Moses?
Yes, ma'am.
That's very, very interesting. That is very interesting indeed. Anyone else would like to share an experience like the one shared by Mr. Moses or give your opinion also? Yes, Mr. Ishaku Pukar.
Yes, ma. I also learned that people with visual impairment, they also read from technological tools. It is called braille. That is, they have to put their hands, their fingers, they are sensing the alphabets. So, and due to technological advancement, even such tools, it is now in form of refreshable one. Before there was a permanent one. It is just like a paper. It was printed permanently. But today, due to technological advancement, there are refreshable one. That is the one that will be changing. And also, uh, there is the one that is also making sound. When they are touching it, it will just be pronouncing what they are touching. I have seen that.
So much. Thank you so much. We'll talk to Mr. Matthews and then come back to Mr. Moses. Yes, Mr. Matthews. Mr. Matthews? I think he is having a little bit of a problem, maybe. Mr. Moses, you can take it, then come back to Mr. Matthews. Moses, you're on mute, Mr. Moses. You're on mute.
Okay. Okay, ma. So actually, I don't know. There is something that I observed with the lecturer taking us MD 413. I think is it Dr. Ramakrishna. So I don't know. It seems, it's my observation. I don't know if it is true. So I noticed that probably he has a kind of site challenge. But I do notice that each time he's having the counseling section, I used to hear something on the ground speaking. So it's like there's a particular device he's using to get in touch with what he's teaching us at that particular time. Because at interval, it will be quiet, then it will come up, then it will be on point. We'll continue at the interval, it will be quiet, then I will hear the thing as if he's telling him the next point to discuss. So that's actually my observation. I don't know how true it is.
Mr. Moses, your observation levels are excellent, I must say, excellent. And that is probably because you are in an integrated school, so your sensibilities are very sharp. You're so right. He is visually impaired, but let me tell you, I'm very proud to say that my colleague, Dr. Tata Ramakrishna, uh, is is so efficient. He is so spot on. He is able to tell us where there is a mistake, where we cannot find it. So therefore, and he
Very
has,
correct, ma'am.
and from him, we have learned to be better people and to be better human beings, I would say, because we realize the need to be sensitive to people who have disabilities. At no time has he ever taken a greater advantage of the fact that he is visually impaired. In fact, I am the program coordinator. Before me, he was the program coordinator of Masters Dispensation. And even now, I go to him ever so often to say, I'm stuck here, help me. And he does it. So because you are in that, you have observed that, and I might not be able to put on my PPT, and I'm sort of struggling with it. No such problem there. So thank you so much for this observation, and I will convey to my dear colleague Dr. Tata how proud we are all of his.
He has actually been excellent, man. He has actually been excellent, man. Very excellent and effective, as you have said.
Yeah, I'm very proud of him and very happy to be a colleague of a person who is so good at his work. Thank you, Mr. Moses. Thank you so much. So let's just quickly proceed then. And what I was saying was that when we are talking about these kind of reflections, so these are some of the devices, or rather assistive technologies that can be used as learning resources for different types of persons who have some disabilities or persons with disabilities. For instance, visual impairment. When we're talking about visual impairment, we might be talking about screen readers, screen enlargers. Even on the websites now, you see that there is a button where the font can be enlarged. These are all the facilities, because technology has brought these facilities and they are able to help us. Speech recognition systems are there. And there are so many of these ways in which I have seen my colleague also. He has his braille materials which are there with him, which help him also to read. In terms of hearing impairment also, as was said by Mr. Moses also, that to help people who are hearing impaired, there are tools by which the voice is strengthened and they are able to do that. And Therefore, whether it is any kind of visual, hearing, physical, or any kind of other impairment, today technology gives us the opportunity to create learning devices which are able to include people rather than exclude them. So this was just a small discussion that we were having, and it was a very, very lively and interesting discussion. Thank you so much for it. Now let's just quickly move to the different types of learning resources that are there. And when we're talking about types of this diagram, I'm just taking another slide. So when we're talking about types of learning resources, when we started this presentation, this session, then and I asked you, and most of you gave me these different types of learning resources, which means many of you talked about, thank you, many of you talked about printed self-learning materials. Yes, that is the most basic learning resource, because distance education has depends upon printed self-learning materials. When distance education was born, it was born out of the need to cover the distance. And as per the history of distance education, there were postal materials which were being sent, and the correspondence education system started. The basic resource was the printed materials which were sent through post to people who were at a distance. Subsequently, when technology became more predominant, the distance education's printed course materials were supplemented by technology, in some cases integrated also with technology. And today technology uh, is more important or more helpful when we're talking about learning resources there. And when we're talking about learning resources, other than the course material, there are many other things which are there, which includes things like, of course, assignments you are aware of. You all have to write out your assignments. So that is also a formative assessment which takes place, and that also you have to write it out, because that's a learning resource. They can also be handouts which are given out, so that teachers, so that you get handy notes in the form of handy notes which are given out. There are also, because we're talking about technology, there are also multimedia resources. And these multimedia resources could be in the form of YouTube support material. Today, there's a lot of material on YouTube. Just now, before this, we also talked about open education resources, which form a part of the online resources which are available. The OERs are available. In India, we have a very, very large online resource, which is in the form of what is called the National Digital Library. And there, if you enroll or you get access to the National Digital Library, then you can access books from those libraries. You can have access to those books which are available, because efforts are being made to digitalize the physical books which are in libraries, which would otherwise not be accessed. This is a part of the government of India's effort to make sure that that valuable resources are available. And even if the person is not in that city and cannot physically go to that city, but through the website of the National Digital Library, you can access these kind of resources. These Another thing is the web portals, the e-repositories. If you see the IGNOU materials, you'll find that all of them are on IGNOU's e-repository, which is called the e-Gyan Kosh. I don't know if any of you has been able to is aware of this or has used this resource. But what I'm going to do is that I'm going to write it on the chat. Are you aware of this resource, the e-Gyan Kosh?
Yes, ma'am.
I will
Yes.
just write it. Yes. So for those who are not aware, I'm just putting it here as as uh, as e-Gyan Kosh, because if you just Google e-Gyan Kosh, uh, then you will be able to access this resource. Uh, E, of course, is E. Gyan in Hindi is knowledge, and Kosh is like a vault. So it is like the vault of knowledge, where you can get knowledge. So all the materials of IGNOU are available on this e-repository, which is there. So even if you need a copy of your e-material, you'll find it there. And it's not necessary for you to look at only the masters in distance education material. Maybe some of you are doing agriculture, or maybe you are wanting to do some research. So you can look at all the materials which are of different courses of IGNOU, and you'll find them there on this e-repository. Since you are all students of IGNOU, you can access this e-repository. It will help you also in your other, besides distance education, in your own other kind of resources also, right? So then, now when we are talking about designing the learning resource, just to tell you that designing a resource is also important, and you have to keep all those factors in mind which we just spoke about, whether it is universal design. But more importantly, in a practical way, what you have to do is that first and foremost, you have to plan what is it that has to be developed, what is the context for which it is being developed, because by doing that, there will be a flow of how this development is going to take place. The next thing to do is to plan your target group. You know what target identification of target group is important, because target group will help you to come to decide what kind of resource will you make, how will you design it, whether it will be bulky, not bulky. All those things will depend upon the analysis of the target group. Once you have the target group, then you will go ahead and make the learning objectives of that resource. And let me tell you that you might decide that I just want to develop a handout to explain one difficult area. So your objective will be just to focus on that particular concept which you think is difficult. So therefore, your learning resource will be different from, say, something which would be demonstrated through a video. Supposing your objective is to teach a particular skill, then you will also decide the content, and then when you're selecting the media, all these aspects, the target group, what the objective is, what is the content that you are teaching, will affect your choice of media. And in addition to that, when you're designing learning resources, you have to pay attention to the type of language that you put in it. The language has to be such that it is interactive, that it is not threatening, non-threatening language. It is easy language. It is easily understood. And the presentation also has to be such that it presents, whether you are using a PPT or whether you are speaking. But the idea is that it should support the act of learning. In terms of technical aspects also, these are important, because you have to cater for the fact that what is it that the learner has. Now, at this point of time, we are doing an online class. There are technical aspects to this presentation also, in terms of the fact that the learning resource should be such that it is in sync with what the learners actually have, and making sure that it is not not made, if you're supposing it's a technological app, making sure that the app is so unpopular that it doesn't run on many people's phones, then there's no point in making that learning resource like that. It has to be such that it is easily affordable, and of course it is accessible. Constant feedback is important. Without feedback, it's a one-way traffic where you may be thinking that you're making the best possible resource, but it's not really going to work unless you do a pilot test for it. You make sure that you get some feedback from those who will be, and then accordingly you change it. And from time to time, you also update it so that you realize that now your learning resource is relevant and it's not something which you did, many years ago, and you're continuing to do that. Then another aspect is that of the cost. We spoke about affordability, and we had a long discussion about the cost of resources. So I don't need to repeat myself, but just to say that when you are doing that design, do not expect your students uh, to spend too much money on on building a resource. Even for as teachers, we have to make sure that we are conscious of the fact that the resource must be affordable and does not create a hole or make a hole in the pocket of the parents. These are all and also as a person of an institution, you can't have you cannot budget for all your money to go into one resource. And most importantly, today, as we live in the 21st century, where we are talking a lot about plagiarism and copyright issues, it's very, very necessary that we are careful, that we do not do anything that will be a source of embarrassment, not just embarrassment, of legal consequences, because copyright uh, is is very dangerous world over. And that is why when we're talking about open educational resources and the use of the Creative Commons licenses, it's a safer way to work, because the net is such that it provides everything. There are so many resources, but the onus of integrity lies on you. It lies on you, because if you copy paste something, it will get, it is faster. Maybe in a on a handwritten thing, it's not, it may take longer, but on the net, it's very easy to find out where there has been plagiarism. In your assignments, in your project work which you submit, please make sure that you are conscious of this issue of plagiarism, and that you avoid any kind of thing that would be legally and ethically incorrect. And I think with that, we will come to the end of this topic of learning resources. And I hope that it is important, because learning resources are very essential for distance learning. The more resources you make, the more accessible you're making your course. If you go on a straight path and you don't make different resources, you will be forcing or pushing out some people with different abilities. And our job as distance teachers is to make sure that we are able to provide the same material in different formats, by print, video, audio, supporting material which comes in, glossaries maybe, handouts maybe. So if you are able to do that, especially for those who are younger, I would say that for open schooling, these are all attractive things which help keep engaged. Maybe at a higher education level, at MA level, you may be able to devise your own resources, but for people who are younger, it is interesting for them to have, and it's engaging actually to have different type of resources. And subsequently, many of you might be working in different areas in schools, integrated schools, open schools, even conventional schools. So understanding learning resources is necessary. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Any comments on the topic today? If not, then I'd like to take a picture of my class. Please do put on your cameras so that we can have a photograph. And the connectivity is a little bad, but nevertheless. Where's Mr. Matthews gone? Yes, there I can see him because I was looking to see my full class. Mr. What about today? Where's Angela? Yeah, I can see Angela also. What about Mr. Burhari, Adamu, Abba, Masood? Where's Miss Najatu today? I'm not able to see her.
I'm here, ma'am.
Are you there? Ah, yes, please do put on your camera. Nice to see you. Okay, so let's take a quick picture. Yeah, I like to see my class. Okay, thank you so much. Yes, here's more of them. Wait. I must take another picture of my class. Yes, Mr. Buhari, nice to see you too. Okay, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you. Thank you for this class.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you, ma'am. Thank you a lot.